look good.
The number one thing that started outside of we all know each other in the industry was me reaching out to you guys because Counts Customs had a dilemma that we had a need that wasn't being filled by what was out there, and all of this started with weld-through primer. We do, you're removing panels, rockers, quarter panels, whatever, any kind of patch panel work, just like that right there. When you pull the panel out and you weld another one in, you still have to have a coating on that.
Right.
And I had noticed that what was available was failing or starting to fail before we even got to the paint process. Thankfully, we would catch it, but that was one of the things that was most important to me that caused me to reach out to you guys. Hey, do you have a weld-through primer that is a 2K and does exactly what the OEM expects it to do, not what the OEM thinks it looks like?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what started all of this, was weld-through primer. And really, really happy with the weld-through primer. My fab guys here absolutely love it. True story, with the red, I didn't realize that what was weld-through primer, what I was sent was weld-through primer, and one was a top coat. And we were using the top coat because it was red and it stood out. It was easy to see where the weld-through primer was for everybody. And it was actually the top coat, not the weld-through primer.
Right.
But you guys told me that it's okay, Ryan, you didn't really mess up that bad. So what's that all about?
So it's funny how you come across that, because typically, first of all, typically an epoxy has never been a weld-through primer, because when you go to weld it, it splatters. It don't have the penetration because it's an epoxy. Mm-hmm. So with ours, yes, you can absolutely 100% weld through it, but at the same time, it's still treating that bare metal below it. It's still penetrating that metal to give you that corrosion protection, but you get little to no burn back, as you can see. But now you're creating less work for yourself, but you are eliminating those products that have been a Band-Aid in the past, the 1K weld throughs.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been using for years.
Right.
And the industry as a whole has been using it,
Right.
The grays or the greens or the copper. And I notice how they fail. They're not chemical resistant in any way, shape, or form. And they're 1K. They're just one part. There's no catalyst that keeps it there. And there's really not much of a corrosion resistance there either, because there's been scraps of metal around here that have a little bit of weld through on it from another brand. And over time, it starts rusting.
Correct.
I mean, that throws up the red flag right there.
Right.
And we're like, well, that's not working the way it says it's supposed to. I really like using the 2K epoxy weld-through primer, and my fabricators love it as well because it's actually a really clean weld.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of interesting that you used kind of
I fumbled into that one
on accident. The top coat, the red top coat, just because you can see what you're doing, what you're working with. So that answers a lot of questions, because whether you're using our standard epoxy sealers or our epoxy e-coats, or even now our epoxy top coats, they're a one-stop shop. So, you're eliminating many different products that all shops have.
Yeah.
Your 1K etch primer, which when I hear people use etch primer,
it gives me shimmers.
Yeah, it makes me want to just my head wants to explode, because what a lot of people don't realize, that, I'm spraying, 1K etch primer, then I'm epoxy primering over top of it, or I'm seam sealing over top of it. In all reality, the acid in that etch primer leaches
all the way
into
everything.
Your epoxy or your seam sealer, and it causes delamination. Yep. Because the acid in that product, and people don't understand that, but it's always been beating people's heads old school. This is what you use.
Acid etch, acid etch.
And it's like, stop with that.
Yep.
So now you're eliminating etch primer, you're eliminating the 1K weld through primer, because now you have a true epoxy that's treating that metal, and it has little to no burn back. So you're eliminating steps, you're eliminating product. Now you're eliminating 1K primer because you've got it all in one can.
Right.
So now you're doing everything that you got to do that you've been using 2, 3, 4, 5 different products with one. that's not putting a Band-Aid on it. It's allowing you to do the job correctly and have the results that you want in the long run.
Right. It's a true corrosion resistance, which is, that's the premise. That's the only reason why we have it, is to keep that metal from rusting to begin with. After we've welded it, we've heated it up. It's going to promote rusting there in itself. And, once the panel is on there, you don't know what it's going to do later on. It's being covered up.
Right.
It's behind a rocker panel, or it's
Right.
behind a quarter panel.
Yep.
2K, and there are shops we've done it. We used our 2K epoxy, but we also know that the burn back on that, still, we've got little pockets, dime-sized pockets around every weld that isn't protected. I was really impressed with this, that, like you said, the burn back on that it almost looks like the welds are glued on there.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, another thing that we're here to do as well, just like I'm glad you said that, because, if you got a little spot here and you're going to, in the past, you're going to mix up a little bit of epoxy. So now you've got mix time, you've got gun time, you've got cleanup time.
Dry time.
And how much of that did you mix up too much so you're throwing it out?
Oh, at least half of it.
So calculate that, by the end of the month, how many times you're mixing stuff and wasting time and cleanup time, but how much of that you threw away. It all adds up. It's all money.
Yeah, especially in a collision environment. I mean, a lot of collision shops, they're working on, one guy is working on 5 to 10 cars a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's I could blow through a gallon of sealer just doing that alone.
Right.
So to have that sitting on their cart, it's a 2K. It is a true anti-corrosive. We tried that on those A-arms. If that's what's in that can and that's what I'm welding, I stamp my approval on that, because that's impressive as hell.
So the one thing too, you got to keep in mind that we haven't mentioned is this has an unlimited pot life. So now you're spraying it, you turn it over, blow the nozzle out, set it on the shelf. Now you can come back a week later, a month later, 6 months later. Hopefully it don't take you that long to use it.
Right.
But the fact is you can do it.
You use that can until it's done.
You're using it over and over again.
It's not good for the first 5 or 6 sprays. When it's done, it's done.
So that's creating a value for you and your shop.
That's brainless to me.
So everybody should have their own can, because now they're not scrambling to try to find a can that it's only got a couple hours left on the pot life, or I got to mix up something, or I'm just going to settle and use a 1K product that is not doing the job.
Right.
So this is what we're here to do, to offer the correct tool in an aerosol can that is getting the job done from start to finish, period.
So we've got E-coat. That caught my eye. I mean, that's pretty much making it brainless for a lot of the guys in the shop, to include myself. That caught my eye right out of the gate, E-coat. And I associated the label and everything. That's an E-coat color. I mean, that
Correct.
literally...
That's OEM E-coat.
And you've got all the E-coat colors that the OEMs used to using.
Yep.
Man. So you can literally, the idea of fixing, doing collision work on an OEM car, or any car for that matter, is to make it look like no one was ever there. This never happened. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate goal for doing collision work.
Right.
And the first tell is, well, all your weld-through primer is copper or gray or black or some other color. It's not even supposed to be there at all. It's supposed to be an E-coat coating. Nice.
So, in a collision shop environment, you walk in and see the process as it's happening. And like I said, these guys are using a 1K etch primer, and then they're using a weld-through primer, and then they're coming back into it either with a 1K primer or the 1K E-coats.
Yeah.
So it's a 3, 4, 5 step process that you're putting a Band-Aid on it. But when you can go to one product and you're using it every step of the way.
Yeah.
So you're welding through it, you're seam sealing over top of it, you're doing body work over top of it, and it's OEM standard, not OEM appearance.
Right. It doesn't look right. It is right.
It is. Absolutely.
I like that a lot. I wanted to try it out. My fabricators, our fabricators at Counts, they've used this extensively. I've only played with it a little bit, but why I got you here, I wanted to see what it does myself. I'm going to weld up some steel. I'm going to use this. I'm going to get all the metal ready, and we're going to do some welding because I want to see it for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to be here to make sure I don't mess that up.
Nah, you ain't going to mess nothing up.
So like we were saying, what's on the market is a lot of 1K. It's a lot of single K. It doesn't have the anti-corrosion properties or the adhesion, believe it or not, that this does. And again, I've been really impressed with this. Not only that it's e-coat, so that's dummy proof right there for guys like me. It says exactly what I need it to do. It needs to match the factory e-coat on panels that need to get spot welded or fully welded in, but it needs to look like we were never there. That's what's critical in what we do and in the collision world. It has to look like no one was ever there and it never happened, but it has to be done correctly. I've got a couple pieces of steel here that I have watched our fabricators use this and they love the hell out of it, but I personally haven't used it. And I've been anxious to do so without, working on somebody else's car. So I'm gonna use these two pieces of steel. I'm gonna demonstrate the Car Rep E-Coat weld through primer. And then we're gonna weld these suckers up. Again, shake the can, shake the can, shake the can, shake the can. I'm listening, shake the can. All right. I'm only going to do where I'm welding just to make the point. Now what this does, those of you that don't know weld through primer, is once a panel is welded on, let's say a rocker panel, that's now a cavity that there's little to no access to, but it's still exposed to moisture in the time that I'm handling it, in the time that it's, the lifetime of the car. And those come with an e-coat on them. And if they don't, you have to put a coating, usually an epoxy, on those to keep those from rusting. Then you have to prep your area for your welds. Well, that little bit of area that's no longer epoxy, that causes rust, and it's usually at the spot welds where it's factory welded together, which changes the integrity of the vehicle altogether, not only causing it to rust later on. So this is standard operating procedures when you're welding pieces of metal together. In this case, I'm just going to lap weld them. You have to have a coating on the backside of that. Otherwise, that bare steel is still bare steel and it absolutely will rust. So this is and should be standard operating procedures in any shop when you're replacing panels or doing a lot of fab work. You got to coat that panel. Otherwise, it will rust. It's not, it could rust or it might rust. It will rust. Of course it will rust. I'll let that dry and come back and I'm gonna start welding on it, sucker. Yeah, baby. So this is a typical scenario when it comes to weld through priming a panel before it gets welded. What happens typically if it's spot welded or even if it's butt welded or lap welded, you want to protect that steel that's behind the other plate. Obviously, when two plates are welded together like that, I'm not going to spray primer or get anything to seep in there or leach in there and protect that from the steel. So you put your weld through primer on there and that protects it. Now in this particular case, we're using a 2K epoxy. The benefit of that is, number one, it's epoxy, so that gives you the best corrosion resistance. Number two, it's a 2K, so it's strong, it holds up. Again, with the salt bath tests on it, exceeding 1,000 hours in a panel that you're never going to see again. I mean, that's impressive by anybody's standards. But that being the case, I'm going to weld these two pieces together and show what we call the burn back, and that's where an actual spot weld is laid in, it's burned into the steel, how far back this epoxy coating is going to burn. I'm not going to set any standards right now. I'm not going to hope one way or the other. I'm actually just going to see how this goes. I know what our fabricators do and I can see what they get. I'm curious to see if old Ryan can do the same thing. But it's a perfect example. Again, all the panels are protected from rust inside and out, exactly how they are from the factory. And it's exactly how it should be on any restoration, any custom. And we all see it in the industry. We see a lot of gorgeous fab work being done and absolutely zero protection on the backside of the panels. And it looks great until it's 10, 20 years down the road and it's all falling apart, rusted. So I'm just gonna MIG weld it. Actually, when it comes to me and TIG welding, I actually turn that sucker into a plasma cutter way faster than actually welding. Man, that's really, really good. There's so my first 4, what I did is I did your typical medium burns, not too long, not too short. Then I did the next 3. Well, I burnt those suckers in there. And then my next 5, I just did real quick, almost like panel adjustment tacks. And I'm impressed with that. Minimal burn back. Ideal. That is what you're looking for. And the next round of epoxying or priming or coating, we'll coat all those, but everything in between these panels has got the corrosive coatings on there and will not rust. That's impressive, man. Let those cool off and I can get the residue off of there and we can see exactly what the burn back is. And now that this is cooled off enough where I'm not burning my fingers, in close inspection, it's industry standard for us is about a thumbnail of burn back. And that's, man, that's identical. That's right where I want it to be. These first 4 welds, these are your typical welds for tacking in. These I really burnt in, so I got a little more of a burnout on us. And these I did short bursts just to test how the wire would arc. A lot of times with weld through primer, it kind of mucks up your welding a little bit. The wire just doesn't want to arc as clean as it usually does. But there it is, tacked in place. Burn through is very minimal. This will get another coat of epoxy when it's in the paint shop and we're doing our body work, as well as this. Again, I'm super impressed with this. The fact that it's a 2K, it's anti-corrosive, it's a real epoxy, and it's an aerosol can all in one. And again, I had no problems welding it. I'm really, really, really happy with that. And I am by no means a welder. Oh, that's impressive to me. Let's see what it looks like behind. For a guy that can't weld, that's welded pretty good there, Ryan. Yeah, that's even less on the backside. I mean, there's almost no burn back at all that I can see. And those of you that have used weld through primer, you know when you scratch it, you can scratch it right back off because it's not a 2K, it's not an epoxy, it's really not adhering, it's just there to make us feel warm and fuzzy but not actually do anything. That's on there. Like that's an epoxy primer on there. Cool. So with that being said, I think I've beat up your products enough, man. I love the hell out of this stuff. I really appreciate you guys coming down here and showing me this stuff. Look at that, all the way back there. That is fully coated and protected. I'm sold.
Like those panels, you didn't even prep those panels, did you?
I didn't scuff them. I ground approximately where I might think I might be welding, but no, I wiped them off with lacquer thinner and it's done. There we go. There's almost none, dude. Other than me bending it and fracturing the epoxies, because epoxies can be brittle like that. I'm happy with that.
Make your shit look good!